And we're back after a brief break. You're watching South Texas Now with attorney Joe Flores. Listen, we are talking about mediation. All right, this is the last way that you can resolve your case without going to war. All right, everybody says I'm going to sue, I'm going to divorce, I'm going to do. A lot of the time you can handle things reasonably, and that doesn't mean being in the same room choking each other. That means separate rooms with a person that has the training, the experience, and the knowledge, and is most often a lawyer that has been through a lot of trials and that has gone through a lot, and who better than Stephen McMains. Welcome, Steve. Thanks for coming, man.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Listen, we left off, okay, with the basics of mediation, that this is basically... Could you walk us through like your, 2-minute speech you give people before we start mediating? Sometimes
Sure.
You have people in separate rooms. Sometimes you put them together and give them a speech.
Sure. So the basic mechanics of how a mediation works, and I think back, I've never really seen it a whole lot where they start together, but you can either start together. More commonly, we start the different parties in separate rooms. And so in whatever facility you're in, whether it's my office or what, you have one party in one conference room, another party in another conference room. And then, they can either be with or without their lawyers if they have a lawyer or whatnot. And then the mediator will go into one side, talk to them, and then go into the other room and talk to the other party. And the mediator, more than anything else, is a facilitator. They're trying to work out an agreement.
Okay.
That mediator is not a judge, okay? Now, that's different than an arbitrator, okay, which I know we might talk about here in a second. A mediator just has no power except the power that those parties give him. In other words, he's got to, basically try to find a way to get the parties to agree to something.
Okay.
Now, I do think one of the biggest powers the mediator has is allowing those parties, a lot of times, the voice to kind of express their concerns. Because when you get involved in technical legal problems, a lot of times the common person just wants to, his story told. And as you know, there's so many technical rules with getting certain things into evidence or whatever else. It's hard to get that out there. So just being heard is a big part of letting parties kind of, I think, just kind of vent and get their issues out there. I think allowing that and then trying to figure out how you can fix the problem is a big thing for a mediator to do. But then mediators will take offers back and forth. I try to really explain to them that, when I'm in a room with parties, whether it's with or without a lawyer, those communications are privileged. So in other words, I cannot, unless I have permission, like through an offer or maybe it's like a piece of evidence, I have to ask for permission to take it into the next room. The point of that is the same point as like confidentiality with a lawyer, is that so that person can speak freely. And there's a few exceptions to it, basically abuse of the elderly, admitting to future crimes. There's some different things. But for the most part, anything you say in there is going to be privileged. And that's so you can speak freely and not worry about hurting your case. And so we get an open dialogue so you can get good, genuine advice from whether it's your lawyer or the mediator in terms of that. And that's where an experienced mediator, in terms of a lot of a trial experience or outcomes in the legal industry, in terms of that, can give advice on what's going to happen, how much it's going to cost down the road, kind of try to save them from that pain. And that's where, pre-suit mitigation can save a lot of cost. Sometimes pre-suit mediations are really hard because you haven't done some of the discovery yet. There's still a lot of allegations. So sometimes that can be hard. But sometimes you can get these things resolved pre-suit, and sometimes it's mandatory. A lot of times in real estate cases, you have provisions in contracts whether they might call for mediation or arbitration.
Well, let me stop you there. Discovery for you guys out there is the exchange of documents. You find out tangible things. You exchange information with the other side, and mediation can happen in the middle of a lawsuit, right? A judge can order you to mediation in good faith, right? In good faith, and people sometimes hate each other. They're tired of, but in the end, it costs so much. Even if you get a judgment against somebody, it's worth Charmin toilet paper unless you can enforce it.
Correct. And I think that's a lot of times as a lawyer when I'm advising clients and we're talking about, filing suit for whatever kind of case, ultimately, a lot of people want to file cases thinking they're going to seek, justice, down in that building, we have down here. You're not going to find justice down there. You go to court for specific reasons. No
offense to the judges or the juries. It's just difficult.
I'm talking about the amorphous sense of justice you get from doing something, not legal rights. We have great judges in this community. And
absolutely.
And I think that rule, that are very fair. And I think we've got a great, bar in terms of great lawyers. And, the bench is great. I think we are lucky to have a lot of the judges that we have. So what I mean by that, I just mean a lot of people, when they think they're going to file a lawsuit, they think the outcome's going to make them happy. And it's just, and as you know,
good luck, man.
It's just not. And so really, when I advise clients about filing a lawsuit, you go there for specific reasons. Hey, you need, hey, you're getting a divorce. Hey, I need to enforce a contract. Hey, I need to go get compensation. And if you're trying to go get compensation, one of the first questions you're going to ask is, can I enforce this judgment? Is because if not, while yes, there might be different business reasons you have to need to enforce or file a lawsuit, for most individuals, it's really just not worth the time or money on it. Now, the problem there is then you get people that kind of get away with some predatory activities.
That's what I want to talk about. You're telling me that there are guys out there like hitting the West Side, hitting Flower Bluff, and I'm not casting aspersions about where you live, but some houses are modest in some areas of town. What are these guys up to?
Yeah, so we were talking beforehand, because obviously I came here to talk about mediation more than anything else. I come from a background with a lot of real estate work, and I deal with a lot of builders and contractors and homeowners and various sides. One of the lawyers I work with, Arnold Gonzalez Jr., he's involved with First Title. So we do a lot of real estate work, a lot of construction work. I came across a case I got referred to, and I kind of have happened upon some stuff, or just really kind of learned more about it recently. And it's dealing with what they call themselves wholesalers, okay? Now, I'm not sure about you, but I get these phone calls every now and then, these cold calls, or even, I think I've even gotten a text message saying, hey, I want to buy your property, I want to buy your house.
All the time.
Oh, that kind of deal. Which I never really thought of as, hey, just kind of threw it away as like telemarketers, type deal, which, obviously there's all kinds of scams you got to be on the lookout for. Wholesaling is a very specific type. And I don't want to call it necessarily a scam, because I do think there's people out there that are doing it that don't mean to necessarily, they're trying to make money. And they're not necessarily trying to scam the people out of it. But what they are doing is basically skirting the law when it comes to acting as a realtor or as a broker when they shouldn't be doing so. And there's very specific rules, okay? There are very specific guidelines, obviously being a lawyer, that you have to follow. And if you're a realtor, you obviously have to go take the real estate, that exam. Yeah. There's a brokerage exam if you want to become a broker. There's various rules that go into it, various ethical rules. They want you to use certain contracts, most of which is to protect the homeowner or the consumer more than anything else, right?
Okay.
Now, there are certain exceptions to selling real estate in Texas if you're not a realtor or broker or a lawyer, okay? One of that is you can obviously sell your own house. Right, you or I we can sell our own house, and we don't need to hire a realtor. We can do that. We don't
rent, own, or whatever.
We can do whatever. We can sell our own property, without that. That's obvious. Okay. There is also a carved out exception in the law where people, if you have an option in real estate, you can sell that option. Okay, an option to buy. It has basically been, and I honestly don't know the history. I've read recently some CLE articles on it, but I called a realtor friend of mine, and he said it's becoming a big problem, and the legislature is starting to take up on this. But what these wholesalers are doing, I think the idea behind the exception of the law is that, hey, if I buy, you get land speculators or different people that if I go buy options in real estate and then all of a sudden the property is appreciating or, whatever else, they decide to sell that option. Hey, I can make some money on this instead of actually closing the deal.
What does it mean, option?
So instead of actually, if you, a lot of times on the TREC forms, Texas Real Estate Commission forms, you're going to put earnest money down before you buy a piece of property, like on a residential piece of property. And that earnest money is to protect the seller. That way the buyer is, he's in good faith, and there's some protection there for holding up your property for a period of time. Okay? So when you do that, you're basically doing an option to purchase the property.
I got you.
All right, you have a contract on the property.
All right.
What these wholesalers are doing are buying and putting these kind of really bogus or kind of bad contracts. They're cold calling, like for instance they'll call you and say, hey, you want to sell your house for $200,000, and you're like, okay, I'm interested in that. What these wholesalers are doing are then getting you to sign a contract that I guess has limited rights. And these contracts probably can vary. I've got limited experience with this, but I'm starting to learn more about it because I'd like to try to help out consumers in the future if possible. But what they're doing is they are then taking that contract that you signed, and you think you're under contract to sell your house, right? You're like, all right, great, I got $200,000. Maybe that's a little bit more than you thought your property was worth. I'm going to do that. So then what they're doing is they are taking that contract and they are shopping that contract to other people, and typically for way more. And then they'll...
To who?
Well, it's a good question. I think... legally speaking, you shouldn't be marketing it in terms of advertising, because then you're definitely you're being a broker. What they typically have is a list of investors they call that will buy real estate that do have cash on hand, and so then they'll sell that contract to that investor for like $250,000. And so instead of like the homeowner getting a better contract, what they're doing is this middleman is like basically taking this deal that you haven't got and selling it to another person.
So how much does a homeowner get? $200 or $250?
Well, obviously it depends on your equity and all that kind of stuff. But no, but there's the contract you signed as a homeowner would be $200. This wholesaler is selling it for more.
Oh, come on, man! Real estate guys get like 6%. These dudes are making 25%,
so
man.
On a case I just am dealing with right now, right? The real estate sales contract he alleged was for $5,000 on a $50,000 piece of property, and he was going to pay the back taxes. He then paid this wholesaler, or the agreement on the assignment that he alleged to assign was to pay this assigner or this assignment $12,000 for this assignment. That means he was, even if you say this property is worth $40,000, this is over like a 25%, fee, which is basically just not allowed by law.
Sounds like unconscionable in the law.
It is. And so what I would advise and tell people to watch out for more than anything else is if you are going to sell your property,
okay.
One, hire a realtor, hire a broker, or take the document to a lawyer first. It does not cost much money for a lawyer to review a contract.
What's your magic number? Because we got 30 seconds left. How can they find you?
361-887-9900.
I love it. 887-9900 for 1 second. Remember a number. Yeah.
So but feel free to call. But an hour at a time, even looking at a contract does not cost, even with me or somebody else. But protect your rights. I think this whole practice seems absurd to me.
Well, they're preying on West Side properties.
They're preying on unsophisticated homeowners or investors.
And as we gray as a society, they're going to start more scams to take care and take the elderly to the cleaners. So we're out of time, but you've been hearing Stephen McMains, not only a lawyer, but also a mediator. I hope you guys have learned about the process. Steve, I can't say enough to thank you for having you on. Any last words?
No, I appreciate it for having me on. Everybody be careful out there.
All right, man, and watch out for predators. Thank you. And we are done.